My wife's death due to her cheating. I stood at her grave and stared at the simple headstone that had only my late wife's name written above the dates of her birth and death. It had been a long time since she had died, but the pain had not subsided, as if it had happened yesterday. My name is Joe Henson. I'm a retired Marine Corps Reserve officer, and my wife's name was Darlene. I hate long introductions in stories like this, so I'll just tell you the highlights. I joined the Corps in 1975, a couple weeks before the end of the Vietnam era. I served as a private in the regular Corps until 1985, when I transferred to the reserves. I had been married before that, but divorced after I caught her having sex with some asshole in our base-provided home after returning from a 6-month deployment. The only good thing about that union was our 2 kids, Mike and Melissa. After becoming a reservist, I applied and was approved to attend officer candidate school. Fortunately, I managed to get my bachelor's degree in electrical engineering and landed a good job with an aerospace company that did contract work for the Department of Defense. I met Darlene at a corporate event, and we hit it off immediately, even though she was almost 10 years younger than me. She and my children became close, and she seemed to be comfortable with my new status as a reserve officer. In those days, reservists served 2 weekends a month and 2 weeks a year. We dated for a few months before I popped the question, and she said yes. We had an amazing wedding, attended, of course, by a Marine Honor Guard, and started building a new life. And what a life it was. I have never been happier in my life than I was in those first few years we were married. We tried to have children, but it didn't work out. After 2 miscarriages and an ectopic pregnancy, the doctor suggested she have her tubes tied. We tearfully agreed and moved on with our lives, occasionally discussing the possibility of adoption. By the time Desert Storm hit, I had just been promoted to captain and was serving as a battalion staff officer. A few years later, 9/11 happened, and all hell broke loose. By 2008, our unit had already been deployed to Iraq twice, and it wasn't until I returned from my second deployment that I learned our marriage had fallen apart. By then, I was already a major serving as the battalion's executive officer. Up until that point, Darlene had given no indication that we were having problems. Far from it. She had shown herself to be loyal and faithful as the day was long. We always kept in touch with each other at least twice a week, sending letters and emails when I was on a business trip overseas, and always tried to talk on the phone once a month. It wasn't always easy to do given the circumstances of combat, but we did our best to stay in touch. Our love was so strong and reliable, at least it seemed that way to me at the time. Toward the end of my deployment, however, I noticed that the frequency of her letters had decreased significantly, and I found myself unable to reach her by phone on the few times I was able to get through. Again, I attributed this to conflict. As usual, I emailed her several times before my return to make sure she knew how to pick me up at the airport. I tried calling and left several messages, but never got a response. At first, I wrote it off to the time difference, but was surprised when she wasn't at the airport to pick me up. I ended up taking a cab home and was even more surprised when I walked into my house. No, Darlene hadn't had sex in the house, and there wasn't an unfamiliar car parked in the driveway. Just the opposite. The house was quiet, too quiet, almost deathly quiet. I noticed a note on the kitchen table next to the coffee pot, the one item I gravitated toward first when I came home. The note read, "Sorry I missed you. Be at 11-1560 Riverside Drive at 11 hour tonight. Everything will be explained. Bring the chip." The short note was signed simply D. No declarations of love, nothing. Next to the note lay something resembling a poker chip with the number 50 engraved on it. At least there's a note. Perhaps, I thought, Darlene had found a job. It made sense, and we had discussed the possibility of her working while I was on a business trip. So I set about packing my gear. It was still pretty early, around 9 a.m., so I had well over 12 hours to spare. I was curious to see what was at the address she had given me, so I got on Google and checked the address by following the link to the company's website. This address was the location of a waterfront strip club called Shadow Lady. The club had a members-only VIP section where apparently live sex shows were held. The site listed 4 top performers, one of whom was apparently Darlene. However, the site referred to her as Darla, the queen of cream sex. I knew what creampy sex was, who doesn't, but I had never encountered the term creampy before, so I typed it into Google and almost threw up. What had my wife done? I went back to the Shady Lady website and noticed that there was a link on the Darla picture. I clicked on it and was taken to a page that offered preview photos and videos. Naturally, I had to take a look, and now I wish I hadn't. There was my dear 47-year-old wife having sex in every possible way. The preview videos were just as bad. She went from one man to another like they were candy. It was clear from her reactions that she liked what she was doing. Underneath the videos was a matrix with images of blue poker chips just like mine. They were numbered from 1 to 50 and were also linked together. The sign said that anyone who wanted to have sex with Darla could click on a chip and reserve a seat at one of her 4 weekly shows. She had sex with 50 guys a night 4 nights a week for an unknown amount of time. I shut down my computer, shocked by what I had just seen. What had happened to my once humble fiancée? The marriage was over, but I needed answers. I looked through my mail hoping to find something but found nothing out of the ordinary. The usual bills, insurance announcements, and the like. I checked my phone for messages and found one that intrigued me. It was a message from Dr. Marks at the base hospital, urging Darlene or me to call him as soon as possible. I dialed the number and called back, getting the kind doctor on the second ring. "Good morning, Major," he said. "I'm glad you called. I've been trying to reach you or your wife for the past few days." "I just got back from Iraq," I told him, "and I haven't seen or spoken to my wife either. How can I help you?" "Major, this is too personal to discuss over the phone. When can you get to my office?" I looked at my watch and realized I had plenty of time to shower, shave, and change out of my uniform. "Let me clean up a little and I'll be right there," I said. He thanked me, and we hung up. Why the doctor needed to see Darlene, I puzzled. It only took me a few minutes to clean up, shave, and dress in my Class C uniform, which consisted of green pants and a khaki short-sleeve shirt. I double-checked my oak leaves and ribbons to make sure everything was in order, put on my black dress shoes, grabbed my garrison cap, and headed out the door. An hour later, I was escorted to Dr. Marks's office, where I was greeted by an elderly gentleman in an eagle uniform. Dr. Marks was apparently a captain in the Navy and outranked me by 2 steps. He stood up, shook my hand, and motioned for me to sit down. "Thank you for coming, Major," he said. "Tell me, and I realize this is very personal, but I need to know, when was the last time you had sex with your wife?" "A year ago, before I left for Iraq," I answered him. "Why?" He pulled a piece of paper from a folder on his desk. "3 months ago, your wife came in for a blood test. We found several STDs and put her on antibiotics to deal with them, but we just got some more results back. I'm sorry to tell you this, but your wife is HIV positive," he said, as he handed me the test results. "We need to know everyone she's had relations with in the last 4 to 6 months." "Good luck with that," I told Dr. Marks. "Why?" he asked. "It seems that during my absence, Darlene has turned into a sex performer," I said. "I found out about it myself this morning before I called you. If what I saw is true, she's probably had unprotected sex with 300 to 400 men in the last 4 months. "My God," Dr. Marks said, "that means we're dealing with a possible pandemic. I'd better get the CDC involved. Where does your wife perform?" "At a place called the Shadow Lady, down by the docks. She performs 4 nights a week, if you believe their website, and she expects me to show up at 11 tonight." "Whatever you do, don't get involved with her in any way, Major," he said. "I suspect they'll conduct a raid and shut the place down. Your wife will have to be taken into custody and hospitalized." "When do you think all this will happen?" I asked. "It takes a little time to get all the details together, but it could happen within 2 or 3 days," he said. I'm sorry you had to find out about it this way, Major. I know it's not what you were hoping for coming home. Is there any hope for her? I asked. There is hope. But let's face it, it's practically a death sentence. Sure, there are plenty of medications she can take, but depending on her overall health, which I'd say is probably poor, things don't look good. Right now we need to contain the infection, he said. One last thing, Major, he said. Maybe I'm overreacting, but I think this needs to be dealt with. I know the Marine Corps doesn't take too kindly to officers' wives who act like yours. Yeah. It's hard to lead Marines in combat if you can't keep things under control at home, I said. The Corps is also looking at how officers in your position handle that kind of problem. I know you probably want to divorce her and throw her out on the street, he said. I nodded in agreement. Think about this. As bad as HIV is, a divorce in her condition would probably kill her. I'm sure you don't want that, do you? He asked. It's tempting, I said. Major, I realize this is hard, but you really don't have all the information. Maybe she's being drugged, or maybe she's being blackmailed. I want you to also consider putting her in a treatment facility. It could be for life, I don't know. Your TRICARE insurance and your health insurance at work should cover that. Let her get the care she needs. Stabilize if you want. Try to work things out with her. What's that quote? Something about justice being tempered and merciful? That was General John A. Lejeune, I said. He once said that justice tempered with mercy doesn't mean a relaxation of discipline. I understand what you're saying, sir. Honor, courage, and loyalty. I understand. Good, he said. Do what you have to do, but not out of anger or revenge. Thank you, I said, shaking his hand. Semper Fi, he said, smiling. Ura, I replied. Dr. Mark strongly recommended that I get tested for STDs, even though I hadn't had sex in over a year, just to be reassured. I followed his advice, took the necessary bodily fluids, and went home. I still had plenty of time before I was due to show up at the Shady Lady, so I changed into something more casual, grabbed a beer, and sat in my den to mull over my options. In a flash, emotions overwhelmed me, and I cried like a baby. Yes, Marines have emotions too. I soon fell asleep dreaming of the early years of my and Darlene's marriage. I woke up around 9:30, showered and dressed for my visit to the Shady Lady. I decided to wear a Marine Corps t-shirt and a pair of jeans. I got to the club at 10:45 and walked up to the front door, where I was stopped by a very large man who clearly had his hands full. I showed him a blue poker chip and told him Darla had invited me. He smirked and waved me over. I'm not much of a bar person, and it took me a while to get to the right place. The VIP section where Darlene was to perform was upstairs and consisted of a row of tables arranged in a semicircle around a large stage. Above the stage were several very large screens, apparently so that everyone could see what was going on. There were already a few people in the club, and I looked around, trying to spot my wife. I didn't, but I was greeted by a large, balding man in a gaudy pinstripe suit. He shook my hand and escorted me to my table. So, you're Darla's husband, he said. I can't tell you how pleased I am to finally meet you. Yes, I am Darlene's husband, and you are... I apologize. How rude of me. I'm Salvatore Giuseppe, the owner of this establishment. Please have a drink with me, he said, waving his hand at the waitress, who was wearing only tiny thong panties. What can I get you? He asked. Bud Light, I said. Salvatore nodded approvingly and ordered a gin and tonic. Listen, he said, his demeanor changing slightly. I know you're a tough Marine and all. I checked you out. 2 Purple Hearts, Bronze Star, Silver Star, Navy, and Marine Corps medals. Served in almost every major unit since Vietnam. Your reputation precedes you. Do us both a favor, will you? No hero show. Seriously. Look, Salvatore, I said quietly. I didn't survive 2 tours of duty in Iraq by being an idiot. This is your territory. You have more people than I do. Yes, I consider myself a tough Marine, but I'm not stupid. He nodded his head in acknowledgement. I just want to know how my wife turned out to be a cheater for you, I said. Salvatore leaned back in his chair and told me how Darlene had started working for him as a waitress in the main club. He told me how much he admired her, watching her work the lounge in her short skirt and tight uniform. Don't take this the wrong way, Major, but your wife is a very sexy woman. No, I've never slept with her, but I've been sorely tempted. Truth be told, I don't sleep with hired servants, he said. However, I know how to use my assets to make money, and your wife has certainly been a cash cow. I restrained the urge to rip his head off and asked how Darlene had become such a cheater. Specifically, I wanted to know if she had been drugged or blackmailed. As you know, there are many drugs available for use on a date. I'll be honest, the first time she was drugged, not by me. And of course, everything here is videotaped. Your wife was upset at first, but then she really got into character. And yes, for her it was just a role, something she used to escape her loneliness. But then she dove headfirst into it. Now she really enjoys it, even though she makes a lot of money from tips and her share of the video. He placed a stack of DVDs on the table. Here's a box set for you on the house. These are the ones that usually cost $300. Curious, I picked up the DVDs. On them, I realized, were over 50 hours of my wife having sex in every way possible. That would come in handy if I decided to divorce her. How long has she been doing this? I asked. She started having sex about 8 months ago. She also throws private parties for very select clients. You know, big government bigwigs, businessmen and the like, he said. Oh my God, I thought. How many of these government figures now have HIV because of her? I see Darla also gave you a free spot on tonight's entertainment show, Salvatore said, pointing to the blue chip in my hand. That alone cost me about $150. You should feel privileged. You know, Salvatore, I said, I appreciate your honesty, but please tell my wife that I don't like sloppy 49ers, okay? Here, give this to someone else. Maybe use it yourself. I don't care, I added, tossing him the chip. Just do me a favor, please. He spread his hands. Sure. Anything. What can I do for you? I took off my wedding ring. Give this to her. Tell her to think about it overnight and come to me in the morning. There's something we need to discuss. Salvatore nodded his head understandingly. I took the stack of DVDs, shook his hand, and left. I had never met Darlene and had no desire to see her perform in person. I made it home and got into bed. My emotions were running high. She had a lot of explaining to do. The next morning, I was up early and sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee. My personal revolver lay in front of me along with the DVDs Salvatore had given me and the result of Darlene's test. I heard the sound of a key in the door and looked up to see Darlene walking in. She looked terrible. She had lost weight and her face was gaunt. Her once gorgeous dancer's legs now resembled shapeless sticks. It was obvious that she had been crying. My God, Darlene, you look like a witch, I said. What happened to you? She slowly walked over to the table, clearly exhausted from the night's sex. I'm so sorry, she said. Please don't give me any bullshit about it just being sex, I said. You know better. Her eyes were fixed on my gun. What kind of gun is that? She asked. Are you going to kill me now? God knows I deserve it. Don't be stupid, I said. It's illegal. Besides, you stupid fool, you've already ruined yourself and probably 3,500 other people and our marriage. I showed her the result of the test Dr. Marks had given me the day before. You have HIV, I told her. Those 3 words could have been called a slap in the face. Oh my God, she whispered, slumping down in her chair. I'm going to die, aren't I? And you're going to divorce me. I could shoot myself right now and be done with it, she said, crying. Listen, Darlene, I said. I'll postpone the divorce if you go to the treatment center today. She looked up hopefully. What? She asked. That's right. You'll let me get you into a treatment center today. They can do a lot more with HIV now than they could 10 years ago, and who knows, maybe someday they'll find a cure. But you also need to get psychological treatment. You'll only get it as my dependent, so I'll refrain from divorce until you're better, I said. Thank you so much. I'm so sorry for what happened, and I promise I'll make it up to you, she said through her tears. She got up to hug me, but I held her back. She stopped and lowered her head. I understand. Look, let me just go back and get my stuff and come home. Then you can take me wherever you want to go. I don't know if that's wise, I told her, but she had already waved me off and headed for the exit. That's when I saw my ring on the table. She must have left it there on purpose. That was the last time I saw Darlene alive. I heard about it from the policeman who came to the house that morning. From what he said, Darlene had gone back to the club and was packing her things. She confronted Salvatore, informing him that she had HIV and was going to get treatment. Salvatore became very upset, pulled out a gun, and shot her twice in the chest and once in the head. The police, health department, and the Center for Disease Control and Prevention showed up and shut the place down. A brief gunfight ensued, and Salvatore was critically wounded. That was 10 years ago. I've since retired from the Corps and now spend my free time fishing. Yeah, Darlene screwed up big time. I never got her side of the story and never understood why she acted the way she did. But I will always have good memories of her, and someday I may even watch her DVD. After all, she was a very attractive woman. Who knows? Maybe I'll meet another woman who can make me as happy as she did. But I'll be damned if I ever get married again. The end. Subscribe to my channel. Thank you.